Hi everyone. Today we're going to go through the assignment KS7, Circumference of Circles. So first, let's go over a few vocabulary words that we need to know. When we are dealing with circles, the measurement around the outside of the circle, here I'm tracing it with my little pointer tool, that is called the circumference. If we want to relate that, it's kind of like what you would call the perimeter to a rectangle or a square, shapes like that. Only when we're dealing with a circle, it's called the circumference. That's the measurement around the outside of the circle. And then in order for us to find the circumference, we either need to know the diameter, which goes all the way across. It goes from one end through the center all the way to the other end. So the diameter, that long word, goes all the way across. Or we need to know the radius. The radius only goes halfway. So the radius is from the center of the circle to the edge. One thing that's really cool is the radius is halfway, the diameter is all the way. So radius is half of your diameter. So let's say, for example, you had a diameter of 6. Then your radius would be half of that. Your radius would be 3. Or if we wanted to go the other way, let's say you had a radius of 5. If that's half the diameter, that means your diameter is twice or double the radius. So the diameter in this case would be 10. And we can use either the radius or the diameter to help us find the circumference, so the measure of the outside of a circle. And there are two different formulas that we can use. You don't have to memorize both, but it does make it a little bit easier because then you don't have to worry about, if you're given the radius, finding the diameter or vice versa. You can just see what you're given and use the formula that matches with that. So if you are given your radius, this is our formula here. Your circumference is equal to 2 times the number pi times the radius. So it's just pretty much straightforward multiplication, and that'll give you the radius, or sorry, that will give you the circumference. Then if you're given the diameter, the formula is just a little bit different, and that is your circumference is equal to pi times your diameter. So once again, if we look at kind of the similarities, they both have the number pi in them. They both involve multiplication only. It's just if you have the radius, you have to also multiply it by 2 to get that double feature, because the radius and the diameter have that relationship of half to double, depending on which way you look at it. Okay, if that little extra there confused you, my apologies. Let's switch on over to IXL, and we are going to actually do some examples and put these formulas into place so you can see exactly how they are used and then how you can do the same yourself. All right, here we are on IXL. Once again, we're on assignment KS7, Circumference of Circles. So we are asked, or here we have our first problem. The radius, so that's R, of a circle is 3 yards. What is the circle's circumference? And not only do we have our problem written in words, we can see it in picture form right here, because remember, your radius goes from the center all the way to the edge, and it's telling us it's 3 yards. And then if we look down below, in the case of this assignment, we are using the approximation of 3.14 for pi. So because we are given radius, if I think back to my two formulas, or in your case, you look in your notebooks and you look at the two formulas you've written down. When we're given radius to find the circumference, we use the formula circumference is equal to 2 times pi times our radius. So let's go ahead and substitute. Let's plug in the information that we know. That C, that circumference, is what we're trying to find. So it's going to stay a variable, and then the 2 just stays a 2. In the case of pi, we are being told we can use 3.14. And then for our radius, we were told that it is 3 yards. So that's going to go in for 3. And then at this point, you are allowed to use a calculator. For this first example, I will show you how to type it into calculator just to make sure that um, you know how to do that. And then also, I will be using the Desmos scientific calculator. It's this other tab right up here. I'll put my spotlight on it. I love this calculator because not only is it free, it is very similar to the one that you see on the FAST testing. And so it just kind of gets you comfortable with the layout of all of the buttons and everything. So we'll come on over. So we have 2 times 3.14 times 3. And we can just put all of that in at the same time. 2 times 3.14 times our radius of 3, and that gives us the answer 18.84, otherwise known as 18 and 84 hundredths. And that is our circumference. That is the measurement around the outside of the circle. That's not too bad, right? All right, let's check this one out. We are told that the diameter of a circle is 8 miles. We want to know the circumference. That's our unknown, that's our question. And once again, we're going to use 3.14 for pi. All right, this time I'm told the diameter, which means we're going to use our other formula. So make sure you look in your notes and notice that that formula is circumference. So C equals pi times diameter. So just like before, we're going to substitute, we're going to plug what we know into this formula. Well, the C is going to stay a C, that's our question mark, that's our unknown. But then instead of using the symbol for pi, we can use the number approximation of 3.14. And that is being multiplied by our diameter, which was 8 miles. And then once again, this is the point where you're allowed to use a calculator. So you can take 3.14, multiply that by 8, and we get a circumference of 25 and 12 hundredths miles in this case. Let's try just a couple more so you can see a few more examples. We are told here that we have a diameter, and that's always important. Make sure you identify whether you're given the diameter or the radius, because that will determine which formula you use. So we have a diameter and it's 16 centimeters, and that's also shown in our picture, because remember with the diameter, that goes from one end through the center all the way to the other end. And we are being asked to find the circumference. And once again, we're going to use the approximation 3.14 for pi. So our formula when we're given diameter and we're trying to find the circumference is C equals pi times D. So our circumference, that stays a C, it's what we're trying to find. The symbol for pi is going to turn into a 3.14. And then our diameter in this case is 16 centimeters. And all we have to do is that one simple multiplication. So pull out your calculator, 3.14 times 16. And that gives us a circumference of 50 and 24 hundredths centimeters. All right, there is one other type of problem that you will run into. And that is when you are given the circumference and you want to either find the diameter or the radius. So let's go ahead and read this problem here. This time we're told the circumference is 62.8 miles, and we're being asked to find the, ooh, that's a funny looking D, there we go. We are being asked to find the diameter, and we're still continuing to use 3.14 for pi. So even when the question's different, our first couple steps are the same. We always identify the information we're given, and then we're going to put it into our formula. Since we're being asked to find the diameter, let's use the diameter formula. And then now substitute, so plug your information into the formula. This time our C, our circumference, is known. It is 62.8 miles, and that is equal to pi, which is 3.14. And then this time our variable stays the variable D because we don't know the diameter. That's our unknown. That's what we're trying to find. Well, when I look at this, I'm like, hey, this looks like an equation. That's something that we've already learned is we have an equation, we're trying to find the diameter, so we want to solve for our variable D, which means we need to get our variable by itself. Currently, it's being multiplied by that 3.14. So how do we get rid of that 3.14? How do we move it to the other side of the equation? We do the inverse operation. So the inverse, the opposite of multiplication, is division. So we can divide both sides by that 3.14. We are allowed to use a calculator. So you can use your calculator to take 62.8 and divide that by 3.14. And we get 20. And then 3.14 divided by 3.14 is 1. So that cancels out because we're just left with one single variable. And looky there, we have our diameter. So if a circle has a circumference of 62 and 8/10 of a mile, then its diameter is 20 miles long. All right, let's try one more like that before we close out our video. All right, here we have our final problem that we're going to do together. So the circumference of a circle is 43.96 millimeters. And this time we are being asked to find the radius, but we're going to continue to use 3.14 for pi. So if we're being asked to find the radius, let's go ahead and use our circumference formula that includes radius. So circumference is equal to 2 times pi times our radius. There we go. All right, just like before, it doesn't really matter. Whenever you have a formula problem, these first two steps are the same, no matter what formula you're working with. Identify your information and then put it into the formula so you can see what next steps need to happen. So this time we do know our C. We know that our circumference is 43.96 millimeters, and that's equal to 2 times pi, and then times our radius, which is unknown, so that's why it's staying the variable r. Well, we need to find the radius. We need to solve this equation for r. But we have those nasty parentheses there. we need to make sure that we get rid of those parentheses. We do that simplification first. And in this problem, our parentheses mean multiplication. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to multiply our 2 times our 3.14. We can simplify that side. And we get 6.28 times our radius. Now, this looks a little bit more familiar. This is more of that equations that we're used to seeing, and we need to use inverse operations to get rid of that 6.28, to move it to the other side. So currently that 6.28 is being multiplied by r, so the inverse, the opposite of that is division. We're going to divide both sides by 6.28. So 43.96 divided by 6.28 gives us 7. And then this cancels out and we have our radius. All right, before you guys go and try this on your own, please remember that IXL has its own set of videos. So if you would like to see some additional examples, check that out. It's always good to hear it in a different voice, get a different perspective. Sometimes that'll make things click. And then otherwise, it is your turn to go ahead and try this. And as always, reach out to your teacher if you have any questions. Bye.